Venerable Chuksanim, the head Dharma master of Won Buddhism USA, said, "This coming year, let us study and practice the essential dharmas of daily practice, which embody the essence of the Won Buddhist teachings. By carrying out the essential dharmas of daily practice, we can pacify our minds, which are at the root of the world's turmoil." So growing up in Toronto, at our house, we had this wooden square artwork. It was painted black with a mirror circle right in the center. And then from that center, there's 3 white circles emanating out. And I always imagined that my parents bought this like right after they got married because it had this like retro feel to it. But I just found out a few months ago from my mother that this piece was designed by my father's spiritual mentor. And the idea was that when you looked in the mirror, you reminded yourself that you are the center of this universe, that renewing society starts with renewing your inner life. So what for all this time was a piece of artwork was now a huge Dharma teaching. And so when I pass by that mirror, I remind myself that my thoughts and my actions have a ripple effect impacting those around me, my family, my community, the world. So Venerable Chuksanim's message, we can pacify our minds, which are at the root of the world's turmoil, really resonated with me deeply. This echoes the words of founding Master Sotaesan, which we read before, is that the war are those that arise incessantly in the countries of people's minds. Therefore, the mind's war is the origin of all other wars and the most severe of them all. Last year, I had the honor of attending a conference. It's called the Parliament of the World Religions, and it was in Chicago, and I was on this panel. And we were talking about the beauty and the power of daily prayer and practice. And a Sikh brother shared a story of how his practice made such an impact and difference when he almost died in the hands of a terrorist. And the terrorist was holding a gun to him, and he said in that moment, he was able to say a prayer for his family, and he said a prayer for his community and the world, and in the very last moment, he looked the terrorist in the eyes, and he said a prayer for the terrorist. And he shared in that panel that daily prayer, his daily prayer, planted the seeds of peace, so that even in the face of violence and turmoil, he was able to tap into the heart, in his heart, to not see the other as an enemy or foe, but in that moment, to actually see him as a brother. And he said, without pacifying this mind, that would not have been possible. A pacified mind is symbolized by the circle we call the Ironsan. Growing up in elementary school, my friends would come to my house. They see all these circles around the house, and they'd be like, Grace, what are these circles? I'm like, how am I supposed to explain the Dharmakaya Buddha, fourfold grace, and ineffable realm of Samadhi? So I looked them in the eye, and I said, these, my friends, are expensive decorations from Korea. And they're like, oh. But if I were to answer them now, I would say this circle, or these circles, represent an embrace, really reminding us that all sentient beings are an extended family, that we are one family on earth. And the circle teaches us that everyone, regardless of your race, your age, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, we are born with this same original nature, Buddha nature. And I'm particularly drawn to the word embrace because it's the word of peace and equality that was taught by our third head Dharma master, Tesan. And he used this term to describe an ideal and egalitarian world. He said, Tonman Hege. And the first character represents a wool blanket. And the second signifies a small portable dining table. So for the dining table to be functional, it needs to be even and stable. Otherwise, anything on top of it would topple over. So this concept of a perfect and equal world is likened to something that is both soft and comforting like a blanket, but is also simultaneously level and balanced. And you've probably experienced this feeling before. This warmth and stability, diversity and equality. The poet Mary Oliver, in her poem, "When I Am Among the Trees," wrote, "When I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks, and the pines, they give off such hints of gladness. I would almost say that they save me, and daily. And they call again, it's simple, they say, and you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine. And just as light flows from the branches, Master Sotaesan taught us that the world will see the light of peace when we truly let our Buddha nature shine. So since we were kids, we've been shaping our view of the world. It's fascinating, really. We take bits and pieces from our culture, politics, religion, and our own ideas of right and wrong, and that forms the lens through which we see everything. When we cling too hard to these views, assuming they're universally right, it narrows down our perspective. It's like we start believing everything around us is static, unchanging. We lose sight of things that are evolving, growing, and changing. This rigidity in thinking shuts us off from new ideas. Worse still, we might end up dismissing or looking down on views that differ from ours. It even breeds negativity towards those who think differently. And our society often pushes us towards this dualistic way of thinking. We begin to view ourselves as completely separate from others, focusing only on our identity and desires, making us oblivious to the interconnectedness of everything. And so Sotaesan is inviting us, asking us, requesting us to critically examine how our mind contributes to suffering. He created a beautiful practice called diary writing to truly examine and learn how we're living our life from day to day. It's this journey inwards to understand what's going on outwards. Diary writing that we do in Won Buddhism is moving us from unawareness to understanding, from exclusion to reciprocity, from fighting to cooperation. The contemplative practice of diary writing is very unique to Won Buddhism, viewing the world as a living scripture. This practice helps us to live day to day, more awake, less half asleep. And this diary writing focuses on how are we using our mind and body. And the practice assesses our daily actions, understanding the balance of our wholesome and unwholesome actions. It enhances our ability to make informed choices in everything that we do. For me, this particular practice has been incredibly beneficial. It's not the Dear Diary from my younger years, which was more of an escape from reality or a reinterpretation of my life. Instead, this form of diary writing is like a mirror or magnifying glass, allowing me to reflect on my mental state without self-editing. It's a method that leads me inward, equipping me to confront daily situations with honesty, vulnerability, and courage. My teacher advised me that the first step to this practice is just record the event exactly as it happened, just like you're taking a picture. And initially this practice was challenging because I was so used to censoring my diary entries, afraid that someone would read it, and I want to be part of the Good Person Project, right? Mm-hmm. So, in many respects, I was reluctant to acknowledge my own biases, my attachments, the ways that I interacted with others. However, over time, the act of recording events as if taking a photo taught me to really embrace honesty, even when it highlighted my flaws, my mistakes. This process improved my awareness of transient thoughts, the sudden emotions, judgmental views I held about myself and others. My diary writing evolved into a valuable tool, enabling me to really look at my emotions as insightful guides and assess aspects of myself that required healing or extra care. Through this journey, my teacher showed me how truthful writing could be a catalyst for change. One powerful device of diary writing is the practice of stopping, identifying the hot buttons in your life, the disturbances, the emotions that arise in the moment. We often fail to recognize when a disturbance happens, especially when we're on autopilot. Can't stop to take inventory of the cause of complicated emotions. When we fail to pause in a challenging situation, it's easy to revert to habitual patterns and react to negative thoughts or overpowering feelings. In other words, diary writing helps us to cultivate the power to stop incessant thinking and create space before responding. So think of each pause as like you're just driving over a speed bump, preventing a potential accident from happening. So I'd like to share an entry that I wrote a few weeks ago, and we always give it a title, and this title is Me and Mother Nature. On a stormy day with rain and wind lashing outside, I made the choice to teach my class from home instead of school. Just 10 minutes before my class was scheduled to start, a loud crash outside jolted me. Huge sensory condition. The sudden loud sound hit a hot button. Worried, I thought, could that have hit my car? Rushing outside, I discovered a large branch sprawled across the rear of my car, leaving a dent and peeling off the paint. The darkness hindered any further inspection of the car. This made me anxious and frustrated, but I paused to consider what was within my control at the moment. Deciding to move my car to the lower parking lot seemed like the best immediate action. Even after moving the car, my anxiety persisted, and I longed to check for additional damage, but the lack of light made it impossible. With class time approaching, I hurried back to my room. I found myself feeling a sense of attachment to the car, and worries about the extent and cost of the damage began to crowd my mind. However, I realized there was nothing more I could do at that moment. I decided to let go and focus on the present task, teaching my class. In the moment of the incident, I was able to pause and assess what was in my control and out of my control. However, it was the journaling practice later that night that helped me to process other aspects of the situation that didn't cross my mind. First, where I live, we have 2 parking lots. One is by the house, and there's a lower parking lot with less trees around. I recognize my lack of mindfulness in choosing to park in the upper lot despite previous similar incidents of branches falling on the cars when it was raining. It was a reminder to be more aware and considerate, not just about immediate tasks like my class, but also about other aspects like where I park my car. Second, upon hearing the sound of the crash, my first instinct was to worry about the safety of my car, none of the ones nearby. This display of self-centered thinking. Finally, this incident also highlighted the power of Mother Nature. She has powers that are not under my control. The only thing truly under my control is my response to the situation. So this fallen branch was an unexpected teacher, revealing to me the importance of mindfulness, how to handle things beyond my control. So a few days later, I came across a passage from the scriptures where Master Suttasan said, "The purpose of having you recite the essential dharmas of daily practice in the morning and evening does not lie in reciting simply the words. Rather, it is intended to help you grasp their meaning in your hearts and assess it in your minds, reviewing them generally once a day, and more specifically, examining them each time you're faced with sensory conditions. It's said that a person's mind is so extremely subtle that it exists when you take hold of it, but disappears when you let it go. How then can a person cultivate one's mind without checking it? Therefore, in order that you may realize this checking mind, I have established the Dharma of keeping a diary. I was like, woo, Sote-san, you are not joking when it comes to practice. Making this direct connection between principle and practice. So yes, I was taught, yes, recite the essential dharmas of daily practice every day, but was I examining them each time I faced a sensory condition? No. So if I go back to this journal entry and I link it to the essential dharmas of daily practice, I would make a connection with number 5. Let us turn a life of resentment into a life of gratitude. I resented the fact that a branch hit my car. I resented the fact that it had to happen right before a class. Resented the fact that I have to pay for the damage. Losing sight of gratitude in that moment. There was actually so much to be grateful for. Grateful that it didn't happen. It happened when no one was around, no one got hurt. Grateful that the windows weren't damaged. I could still drive the car. Grateful that I have a job that I can pay for some of the costs. Grateful that I can drive and the list goes on. And this reflection reminded me of a story from one of our great Won Buddhist masters who was able to discover gratitude in a moment of turmoil. Venerable Sangjin Pakdangshi. And he once shared a story in his book that lingers in my memory. And he recalls a time when he traveled to Hawaii, and before departing for the US, a temple member asked him to deliver a jar of red pepper paste to her son who was studying abroad. This was back in the day when red pepper paste was very expensive in the United States. It was also back in the day when you could actually put a jar of red pepper paste in your luggage and go through security and you're okay. So, of course, Venerable Sangjin agreed and brought the jar of red pepper paste with him to the US. And he was staying at a hotel, and he left to go sightseeing, and he came back to the hotel to find one of the walls covered in red pepper paste. And the jar had burst, splattering the red pepper paste all over the wall. So he discovered that the paste had, I guess, started to boil in his bag and was in the planes, and eventually causing an explosion that happened in his room. And as soon as he saw that red wall, he felt worried, but at the same time resentful. There was no cloth in the hotel room to clean up the mess, so he resorted to cleaning up the wall using his underclothes. As he started to clean the paste off the wall, one of the items of the essential Dharma daily practice came to mind, which was, let's turn a life of resentment into a life of gratitude. He realized the temple member didn't intend for this to happen. She would not have wished for it to happen to him either. Furthermore, if the jar had exploded in the plane or the taxi, it would have been a far worse situation. Fortunately, it was in an empty hotel room. So after this realization, Venerable Sangjin felt gratitude, and he said to himself, what a relief, I'm so grateful. And I appreciate this story, because Venerable Sangjin, like anyone else, felt a moment of resentment when he saw the incident on that wall. However, unlike many of us, he was immediately able to turn resentment into gratitude. And that one decision turned an unpleasant situation into one of finding grace. It was a moment to shine the light inwards instead of pointing the finger outwards. It probably took him only a couple of minutes. It took me a couple of weeks. So many of the students with whom I've shared this kind of diary writing with have expressed their gratitude for how much they've learned about themselves and how empowered they feel to modify their reactions through this practice. So I just want to share one more before closing. This is from a student, and the title is called Job Opportunity. I received a call with a job offering for 15 hours a week at a well-known herb company. I'm friends with the company owner's daughter, and she immediately thought to call me when the position opened. I was very excited and had a strong desire to take this position because I would get to work with a well-known herbalist. I was also very flattered and felt slightly obligated to answer yes, since they were offering the position to me before they put up an official job posting. I also was excited by the prospect of more income because I often worry about finances. I paused and asked if I could take time to think about it before deciding. I had just left a job at a local acupuncture clinic, in part because I wanted more time to focus on my studies. I knew I could take this new job, but it would likely come at the cost of my physical and mental health. I had to ask myself the question, would I be willing to give up my daily practices, sleep less, or put fewer hours into school to work with this amazing company? In the past, my answer would have been heck yes. But I realized that's because I had normalized my own dysfunction. I used to do too many things and get sick, have panic attacks and depression because my desire toward success outweighed how I valued myself. I'm in the process of recontextualizing what it means to be successful. Perhaps success means eating, sleeping, and being well. I have enough financial stability right now to not need the extra money. Yes, that means living off of student loans, but I trust that I can and will pay them off in the long run. I ended up declining the offer. I'm grateful to have stopped, examined my own emotional response, then decide when I had given some time for reflection independent of my initial impulse. So the journey towards peace is indeed challenging, and diary writing can be a source of strength and clarity in this endeavor. It really provides a consistent framework for reflection and growth. Essentially, diary writing transcends being just a personal exercise. It acts as a foundational step towards achieving broader objectives of communal harmony and fostering relationships that are mutually enriching. Diary writing helps us to see the world as a living scripture. Over time, you will realize that you're creating your life's scripture. The moment that you pick up that pencil or pen, or you start tapping away at that keyboard to write your diary entry,